Now, this is one of the most exciting video tutorials of training series number 1, because in this example, we're going to watch how Dan and Megan Albright, the case study that we've been reviewing in each video, put a plan together to successfully eliminate their $290,000 mortgage, avoid over 250 mortgage payments, and save more than $210,000 in interest costs on this one property alone. And they want to do this on multiple investment properties. So let's begin. In the tutorial called Killing Non-Mortgage Debt Fast, we demonstrate how Dan and Megan eliminated all 3 of their credit card balances and their 2 auto loans, totaling almost $50,000. And it increased their cash flow to over $2,000 on average each month. They accomplished this by using a specific set of techniques because it fit their specific needs and goals. In their example, those techniques were called lump sum payments, paycheck parking, and cash flow stacking. And we'll be using those same techniques again in this video. For you to embrace these techniques, you're going to need to first accept the fact that much of what you think you know about banks and interest rates may be completely inaccurate. Have you ever noticed how banks are continually changing their rules in order to increase profits? That's because all banks are in business to make money, and that money comes from you, their clients. Therefore, the rules that they create are by nature of the relationship primarily one-sided in favor of them, the bank. This has led you, the consumer, to perceive certain things like high interest rates are bad and low interest rates are good, when in truth, the only number that matters is the total interest cost. For example, most people would rather pay 4% APR on a $100,000 loan than 18%, and rightfully so. But if the 18% APR loan was paid back in 10 months and the 4% loan took 360 months to pay back, I'm willing to bet that you'd now change your mind and prefer the 18% loan. The fact is, you don't really care that much about interest rates themselves. You've just been told that you should. You should actually care more about the total interest cost, the total amount that you'll end up paying over the term of the loan, not the interest rate itself. It's the total volume of interest that matters. That's why leverage can be both powerful and also very dangerous. Leverage can be just as great in the short term, if not better, than you perceive it to be in the long term. But the banks don't want you to know that. In our example, the total amount of interest that Dan and Megan would pay if they follow their loan to full 30 years is over $283,000 in interest. This means that the total cost to own their property, if they take 30 years to pay it off, is over $500,000. That's the $290,000 in principal plus the $283,000 in interest. So it's actually closer to $575,000. Now, fortunately, there are a number of ways to pay your bills and your mortgages in order to avoid as much as 80% of this unwanted interest. Regardless of the strategies that are best suited for you, we must all agree first that the only way to get these types of results is to remain disciplined to a better plan than the one that you agreed to when you signed your loan closing paperwork. So at this point, the Albrights have eliminated their non-mortgage debt, and they're now focused on eliminating their mortgage payment and avoiding as much unnecessary interest that they can. In order to avoid this extra interest and expedite the results of their mortgage reduction plan, they focused on leveraging 2 different debt weapons. And during the course of VIP's first 3 years of knowing Megan and Dan, they had acquired over $78,500 in total various debt weapons. One debt weapon was a $25,000 unsecured personal line of credit, which they learned, and you'll now learn, to use in a totally new way. Need help understanding the concept of debt weapons? Please check out the VIP Debt Weapons video tutorial to understand the basic fundamentals. The key to debt weapons is knowing which one to get, where and when to get them, and then what you do with it once you have it. Dan and Megan's combined monthly household take-home income was approximately $5,950, and their mortgage payment combined with their living expenses totaled about $3,925 per month on average. With these 2 numbers, we can easily calculate their cash flow by simply taking their income and subtracting their expenses. In this example, Megan and Dan's cash flow was about $2,025 on average every month. Calculating your cash flow every month is important because it's the first step to turning the banks upside down on themselves and to effectively now understand how cash flow is used in conjunction with each debt weapon. Once we've calculated cash flow, it's then time to calculate the MLS, or the maximum lump sum. The MLS is the maximum amount that you can safely and comfortably borrow from each debt weapon. To calculate your MLS, just simply multiply your cash flow by 10 months. For Dan and Megan, this totaled about $20,250. It's very important to note that credit scores are easily impacted when debt weapons are used improperly. So knowing the correct actual lump sum, or ALS, to apply from a specific debt weapon based on your unique circumstances is critical if you want to avoid harming your credit scores. ALSs can vary significantly from person to person as well as from the MLS. So check out the credit scoring video tutorial to learn how credit applies to these calculations, and then make sure you get your free one-on-one coaching session with an expert before making any lump sum payments. In the case of Dan and Megan, we determined their ideal ALS to be about $20,000. The first step they took after they had their ALS was to apply this lump sum amount of $20,000 towards their mortgage. Now this counted as the current month's mortgage payment, and it also reduced their mortgage balance to about $270,000. However, you'll immediately notice that this also creates a new $20,000 balance on their debt weapon, which they now need to pay off. Because we calculated their MLS and ALS using a 10 times multiple, we can expect that once they implement paycheck parking, the Albrights will pay off their $20,000 debt weapon balance in approximately 10 months to 1 year. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're wondering, tell me what happens to the payment and interest costs associated with this new debt weapon balance, right? First, Dan and Megan will be leveraging the paycheck parking technique every month, which will count as their monthly debt weapon payment. This also works if you're self-employed because we use averages. And because they park their income against this debt weapon each month, they're paying an average of $5,950 towards this balance of this debt every month. This simple strategy begins to compress the balance of the debt weapon for an average of 20 to 28 days every month, reducing the amount of interest that the bank is able to compound daily. Plus, it puts each of their dollars to work for them nearly every day of the year. So Dan and Megan are no longer allowing their money to sit unemployed, so to speak, in their checking or savings account, where they earn almost nothing from the banks. Instead, they're effectively earning the same rate of interest, which they are preventing by parking the income until it's needed. When funds are needed to cover the monthly mortgage and the other expenses, they again leverage the debt weapons for the needed funds. They're just treating their debt weapon like they would their checking account. Now, there are several other strategies that might suit your current financial situation better, so please make sure you watch all the video tutorials and then replay the sections until the concepts are understood. I'm now going to continue to run through our example and show you how these two techniques helped Dan and Megan save hundreds of thousands of dollars in interest. After Dan and Megan paycheck parked $5,950 towards their debt weapon balance at the end of month one, they again leveraged the debt weapon to pay their $2,325 worth of living expenses, which increases the balance of the debt weapon, and it brings the total new balance to about $16,375. In the second month, Dan and Megan just repeat this process. They paycheck park, dropping the balance to about $10,425, and further reduces the total interest costs that they'll incur. And then at the end of month two, they now have another mortgage payment and the $2,325 in living expenses. So by the end, they now have a new balance of about $14,350. We've now entered what we call full cycle, which means that every month from this point forward, until this balance is paid back, Megan and Dan will paycheck park $5,950 on average into their debt weapon and pay a total of $3,925 in expenses. Therefore, every month that passes, the total balance on their debt weapon reduces by about $2,025, which is their cash flow each month. It just stays in the account. And from this point forward, it's very easy to do the math. We just take the current $14,350 remaining balance on this debt weapon and we divide it by the $2,025 of average cash flow to calculate the total number of months it's going to take Dan and Megan to completely pay off their debt weapon. The total here will be about 7.1 months, and after accounting for the 2 months that we already paid, the total ends up at about 9.1. Let's now factor in the interest that's been accumulating on the balance throughout this term. For this example, let's use a relatively high interest rate of 18%. Most debt weapons are between 7 to 10%, but I want to be very conservative, and I'm going to convert this into an $1,823 full-term dollar amount. With our strategy of paycheck parking, we pay debt back very quickly, which means that even with a high interest rate, there's not much interest cost associated with the debt, compared to the interest costs on the same $20,000 at 5.2% mortgage APR over the full mortgage term. From this point forward, we know that implementing this strategy, Dan and Megan's mortgage debt can be reduced by $20,000 every 10 months at a total interest cost of $1,823 each time. Imagine if you had more cash flow than this. Remember, they started with about $400 in cash flow, and you'll see that in the other video tutorials. For many people, it's hard to comprehend the power of what's happening. So let's use VIP's Cash Flow Cruncher spreadsheet and take one closer look at the mathematical impact of this strategy over the entire term of their loan. For this example, we'll be using the Cash Flow Cruncher loan calculator page. To learn more about all the pages in the Cash Flow Cruncher tool, please see our Cash Flow Cruncher video tutorial. And if you're interested in using our Cash Flow Cruncher tool, as part of our continued effort to improve our videos and as a thank you to our visitors, we've made the Cash Flow Cruncher available completely free to all VIP site visitors who submit their feedback after viewing training series number 1. Starting with a loan balance here of the $290,000 with their interest rate of 5.2%, spread out over 360 months or 30 years, you can see that total interest cost of $283,000 here. Let's go down to payment number 1 and see what happens when Megan and Dan leverage that $20,000 lump sum payment from their debt weapon. Now, for some, this might be difficult to see, but what I want you to do is pay close attention up here to the total number of payments saved, the number of years saved, and the dollar amount of payments saved. You can immediately see that with just one lump sum payment and one simple technique, Dan and Megan's strategy allowed them to prevent $64,000 in interest on that mortgage. Watch what happens when we apply another $20,000 lump sum in month 11 after they've paid off the first lump sum, and now they've saved over $111,000. As you can see, they've also eliminated nearly 8 years from their mortgage with these two simple steps. It makes you wonder why this wasn't taught in school, doesn't it? You might have been in your mortgage for 5 years now, or even just 1 year. It doesn't matter. These same techniques still apply. But wouldn't it be great if you could eliminate 100 or even 200 payments just like that? Finally, let's review the same example using the visual of your typical mortgage amortization schedule. The red displays the total interest and the gray displays the total principal that's covered by each payment over the 30-year loan term. As you can see at the beginning of a mortgage, most of your mortgage payment goes to interest. But what happens when we leverage our lump sum and paycheck parking strategies along with cash flow stacking to reduce the mortgage balance by $20,000 every 10 months? We end up advancing down the amortization schedule by approximately 4.5 years and save substantial amounts of interest, even if you sell your home early. This literally means that when Dan and Megan apply a $20,000 lump sum from their debt weapon, their next mortgage payment will cover the same amount of principal on their loan as it would have if Dan and Megan had been paying for 4.5 years into the loan. Yet it's only the second month. Then in month 11, when the debt weapon balance reaches 0, the Albrights repeat this strategy and apply another $20,000 lump sum and further advance down the amortization schedule, continuing to repeat the process throughout the existing term of their loan or until they sell. Watch the results if they were to pay until this mortgage was paid off. The original balance, producing a $283,000 plus interest cost over the course of 30 years, now becomes just $72,500 in total interest, which means that they were able to save themselves approximately $210,760 and avoid 257 payments. This is often one of the most popular video chapters of training series number 1 because in this example, we'll see exactly how the Albright family designed a plan to successfully kill nearly $50,000 in non-mortgage debts and avoided countless interest costs. Now, this strategy put their real estate goals on the fast track, which also excited them a great deal and inspired them to share our classes, which earned them even more revenue. Let's go ahead and begin. We demonstrate how Dan and Megan constructed a plan to avoid over 250 mortgage payments on the home they live in and save more than $210,000 in interest payments, as well as increase their cash flow to over $2,000 monthly. They accomplished this by using a specific set of techniques which fit their specific needs and goals. And we'll be reviewing those same techniques again in this tutorial. Now, regardless of the strategies that are best suited for you and your family, The secret to successfully using any new techniques is to accept that our schools were missing much of the education related to finances that impact our everyday lives. Furthermore, much of what we've picked up along the way has either changed or was inaccurate to begin with. Over the past 12 years, VIP has located hundreds of different techniques to accelerate financial goals. And currently, we're teaching 17 of those techniques to maximize or protect credit scores. We also teach 34 to drive cash flow higher, 28 to rapidly eliminate debt, and we use a total of 16 different debt weapons on a regular basis. Although the techniques are rarely complicated, there are infinite combinations between these, which can be tricky because you'll not use the exact same combination that we've helped the Albright family use. And if used incorrectly, these can be dangerous. And this is why the free phone coaching session is considered so important in order to safely individualize your plan to your needs. As you've seen, Dan and Megan learn some basic techniques in order to rapidly increase their credit rating, as well as acquire new debt weapons, which allowed them to focus all of their attention on eliminating their non-mortgage debts. And this helped them avoid as much unnecessary interest as they could. Now, if you're still unclear, make sure you understand the fundamentals of debt weapons and credit scores by watching the other video tutorial chapters. Now, there are 4 factors that you have to consider to strategically eliminate all of your non-mortgage debts quickly. And the first is rarely taught. It's called target rate. Now, target rates are different than interest rates. Target rates are calculated by taking the minimum payment on any debt and dividing it by the balance of that debt. The higher the target rate, the more money you spend each month in relation to that balance, which means that you gain the most cash flow from that account when it's paid off in full. The comprehensive spreadsheet called the Cash Flow Cruncher will calculate this number easily for you. Now, are you interested in using the Cash Flow Cruncher tool? As part of our continued effort to improve our videos and as a thank you to our visitors, we've made the Cash Flow Cruncher available completely free to all VIP site visitors who submit their feedback after viewing the entire training series. The next factor to consider is the type of account. For example, a revolving account, such as a credit card, will reduce your minimum payment relative to your balance, whereas an installment account, like an automobile loan, does not. And this will play a role in your planning process. The third factor is the impact to credit scores. If something is going to have an adverse effect to credit scores, it's often encouraged to find another approach. For example, borrowing on a revolving account generally has a far greater impact to a credit score than borrowing on an installment account. On the other hand, paying off installment accounts on vehicles, for example, rarely has as much positive impact to a credit score as paying off a revolving account. The final factor to consider when looking at strategically eliminating non-mortgage related debts is that of interest rates. Interest rates rarely matter as much as the banks want us to believe. The most important number to consider to us consumers and business owners is the total interest costs. If you borrow short term, even with a higher interest rate, you pay less than borrowing long term with lower interest rates. And this is evidenced even more clearly in the other video tutorial chapters. We will be considering all 4 of these factors as we walk through Dan and Megan Albright's non-mortgage debt elimination example. Now, at this time, when we had progressed to this stage, Dan and Megan were very nervous about their family's safety because they had accumulated nearly $50,000 in non-mortgage debts, which was costing them a minimum of $1,135 on average each month. It was for that reason alone that we felt it would be the right decision to have them enroll in the VIP coaching even though they didn't yet have a mortgage, so that we could help them get out from underneath this burden, as well as begin to apply the same techniques to their real estate goals as quickly as possible. When we reached this point in their coaching, they had an average combined monthly household income of about $5,950, and expenses totaled about $5,050 per month on average. With these 2 numbers, it's easy for us to calculate their average cash flow by just simply taking their average income and subtracting their average expenses. And in this example, Dan and Megan's cash flow was at this point about $900 every month, which was up quite a bit from the $400 in cash flow just a few short months earlier. Let's assume for a moment that they decided not to change their behavior from that time. Almost everyone in a class of 100 people would agree that it would take them longer than 10 years to pay off this $50,000 of debt, and that they would continue to accept that debt is a normal way of life. You can probably imagine how much interest they would have paid. Have you ever thought about the total interest that you've paid in the last 10 to 20 years? These techniques will help you prevent that moving forward. Once we've calculated cash flow, it's time to calculate the maximum lump sum, also known as the MLS. The MLS is the reason this approach works for both employees and self-employed borrowers. The MLS is the maximum amount that you can safely and comfortably borrow from your debt weapons. To calculate the MLS for non-mortgage debts, simply multiply your after lump sum cash flow by 12. For Dan and Megan, that totaled $15,420. It's very important to note that credit scores are easily impacted when debt weapons are used improperly. So knowing the correct ALS, or actual lump sum, to apply from a specific debt weapon based on your unique circumstances is important if you want to avoid harming your credit scores. The actual lump sum, or ALS, can vary significantly, not just from person to person, but also from the MLS, the maximum lump sum. So check out the other video tutorial chapters to learn how credit applies to these calculations, and then make sure you get your free session with an expert before making any lump sum payments at all. In the case of Dan and Megan, we determined their ideal ALS to borrow from their brand new $20,000 debt weapon was about $14,900, and that was used to pay off the balances of their credit cards in full, which not only drove their cash flow to almost $1,300 each month, but it also drove their credit scores much higher. However, you'll immediately notice that it also creates a $14,900 balance on their debt weapon, which they'll need to now pay off. Now, because we calculate their MLS and ALS using a 12 times multiple, we can expect that once they implement paycheck parking, the Albrights will pay off their $14,900 worth of debt weapon balance in approximately 1 year. Most people wonder, well, what happens to the payment and the interest costs that are associated with this new debt weapon balance? First, Dan and Megan will be leveraging the paycheck parking technique every month, which will count as that month's monthly debt weapon payment. We'll also add the interest costs on this debt weapon in at the end, so it's not forgotten. Now, because they paycheck park their income against this debt weapon each month, they pay an average of $5,950 towards the balance of this debt each month. And this simple strategy begins to compress the balance of the debt weapon for an average of 20 to 28 days each month, reducing the amount of interest that the bank is able to compound daily. Plus, it puts every one of their dollars to work for them instead of for the bank nearly every day of the year. So Dan and Megan are no longer allowing their money to sit unemployed in their checking or savings account where they earn almost nothing from the bank. Instead, they're effectively earning the same rate of interest, which they are preventing by parking the income until it's needed. And then when funds are needed to cover the monthly mortgage or the housing expense or any other monthly expenses, they again leverage the debt weapon for the needed funds and treat their debt weapon the same way they would their checking account. Now, there are several other strategies that might suit your current financial situation better, and we can evaluate that during your free coaching session. We also invite you to watch these examples of the techniques in use on any of the video chapters as often as you'd like. I'm now going to continue to run through this example and show you how these two techniques help Dan and Megan save years of interest costs, and how you can do the same. After Dan and Megan paycheck park $5,950 towards their debt weapon balance, at the end of the month, they again leverage the debt weapon in order to pay their $4,665 worth of living expenses. And that increases the balance of the debt weapon, which brings the total at the end of the month to approximately $13,615. This is known as full cycle, which means that every month until the balance is paid back in full, Dan and Megan will paycheck park $5,950 in their debt weapon and then pay the total of $4,665 in expenses. Therefore, every month that passes, the total balance on their debt weapon is reduced by $1,285, which is their cash flow. And this makes it very easy to do the math. All we have to do is take the original $14,900 debt weapon balance and divide it by the $1,285 cash flow, and it will calculate the total number of months that it will take Dan and Megan to completely pay off this lump sum amount before interest is added in. The total here will be 11.6 months. Let's now factor in the interest that's accumulating on the balance of our debt weapon during this time. And for this example, let's use a relatively high interest rate of 18%. Most debt weapons are much lower, but I want to prove that interest rates are not much more than interesting when paying off your debt quickly. At 18%, the interest cost on this balance during that time is $1,414 during the full term. With our strategy of paycheck parking, we pay debt back quickly, which means that even with high interest rates, there's not much interest cost associated with the debt, compared to the interest costs on the same $14,900 of credit card debts that they originally had over that original payoff period. Let's take a look at the mathematical impact of this same strategy on their car loans. We consider the same 4 factors, which designs the best plan, which we determined was to pay off auto loan number 1, even though it was a slightly better interest rate because it gives us more cash flow. By this time, the balance had been paid back down to about $16,500. So we start with a lump sum amount from the debt weapon, the original $20,000, which had been paid back. By using $16,500, they again paycheck park their average income of $5,950 and eliminate any additional payments, as well as compress the daily interest that's accruing. The balance thereby reduces for the majority of the month to about $10,550. And then at the end of the month, they again leverage the debt weapon the very same way they would their checking account to pay their $4,215 worth of monthly expenses. And then that leaves the average cash flow, which had increased to $1,735, parked in the debt weapon instead of parked unemployed in their bank account. Again, the math to calculate a full cycle term is easy. You just simply take the original balance of $16,500 and you divide it by the cash flow of $1,735 to calculate the payoff term prior to the interest costs being added in. The total here is 9.5 months, and when we add the interest of $1,237, the total payoff term in this cycle is just over 10 months for cycle 2. Let's go ahead and fast forward through their final auto loan cycle and take a look at the result of this plan. As you can see here, the first 2 cycles, when added to that final cycle, was just 30.9 months. It only took them about 5 months to initially drive their credit scores up and acquire their first debt weapon. So in total, this outcome was achieved in less than 3 years. It makes you wonder why you weren't taught this in school, doesn't it? You may have $5,000 in debt, or you may have $150,000 in debt. It does not matter. There's almost always a better way to eliminate years of interest and stress by using techniques like these. All the video chapters in our trainings teach many powerful strategies, as you should be seeing by now, which may or may not help you reach your goals far more quickly. There are countless other techniques, however, which we just simply don't have time to review in one short training. As long as you're open to the idea that there are probably accelerators to your cash flow, your debt elimination, and your credit enhancement plans, then you're going to be okay. Even if the problem right now is that you just don't have a plan. Let's review what it looks like to take this information to the next level where it's actually working for you. Every person is different, so I learned quickly that understanding how to implement new banking methods for your own personal circumstances is an important first step. Now, to do that, you must know the solutions that are available and then take proper steps to select the solutions that are compatible as well as easy to remain disciplined to. Over the past decade, we've reviewed countless programs, everything from books that cost $20 up to coaching programs that cost $45,000 or $50,000, and nearly all of them offer some benefits. So how do you differentiate between them for your own needs? Well, here are a few key qualifiers to consider when deciding to invest in any debt elimination, credit scoring, or cash flow management program. Number 1, are you capable of taking practical and reasonable action if you're shown how? If you struggle to put quality advice into practice, it's likely going to be a waste of your money regardless of how much potential any solution has. The second question is, does the product or service that you're about to pay for have proven results as well as a positive reputation? And if not, I wouldn't move forward. Third, is it going to push you further than you can push yourself? If you can do it all on your own and not spend unnecessary time and money, then do. If you're going to get results far more quickly, then it might be worth the investment. The fourth question is, will the cost of the program generate a return on your investment that exceeds your personal definition of value? Let's face it, education, technology, support, and coaching are really no different than any other type of investment you make. Just take Dan and Megan, for example. They invested over $4,000 for our 2-year coaching membership, and their plan will easily save them close to $250,000. In my personal definition of value, that's a strong return. Number 5, will the company refuse a sale if the program does not meet your needs? Or are they just ready and willing to accept payment from anybody, even if the solution does not adequately suit the individual or the business? Unfortunately, the financial services industry is overrun by greed and scams. So an easy way to pre-qualify the solutions that you're considering is to first identify the agenda, if possible, of the company that's selling you on a product or a service. Is it to make as much money as possible, or is it to optimize the success of each of their clients? Businesses that market on a referral basis only are often required to exceed expectations in order to generate new business. So it's a very powerful method to identifying the quality of a provider, is determining their agenda and how they market. The final question that I always need answered is, does the company stand behind their claims of your success? If a company is willing to make predictions and speculate on my ability to succeed, are they also willing to put their money where their mouths are? Of course, your inability to take action on qualified advice could easily lead to missing your target goals also. However, if you hold up your end of the bargain and you still miss the mark, is the company willing to mitigate your displeasure? This qualifier says a lot to me about a provider. Now, before you start feeling overwhelmed, we're going to help you decide the best solutions for your needs. And we're only going to recommend our coaching system to those that we believe are certain to get extraordinary results. We don't pay any of our specialists a commission, which means that you can go into the second part of this training, which is your free coaching session, knowing that you're not going to be pressured to buy anything. The moment that you share your feedback about this 100% debt-free for life training series, you will get your very own cash flow cruncher tool, absolutely free. So make sure that you check out the cash flow cruncher chapter if you haven't already to learn the basics of how to use it properly. Then you're going to schedule your free one-on-one coaching session with our certified debt-free for life specialist. And that person is going to review your cash flow cruncher and your objectives. Now, finally, you're able to supercharge your objectives and your cash flow by joining our 3D affiliate program. When you fill out a feedback form for us, you're qualified to participate in that completely free and get paid generously just for sharing our classes with the people that you care about. So make sure you watch the brief residual income streams training on the website for details about that. When you couple the 3D affiliate program with the techniques and the methods taught in our trainings, the financial results are mind-boggling. Now, during your free coaching session, our experts are going to help you determine which of the techniques covered in our classes, as well as many others, would work best to accelerate your goals. And then we're going to design your short-term plan by reverse engineering your long-term goals. As you can see, you can make a lot of headway without investing any money at all. Now, for those who are qualified for our subscription-based coaching and want to fast-track their progress, we're going to provide an unlimited number of phone coaching sessions over the course of 2 years. And that's for anyone in the entire country. We take the overwhelming process of eliminating all your debt or enhancing your credit, and we just break it into small, simple action steps. We then itemize each of those customized steps here on the left, and all you have to do is share your results on the right. And once each step is completed, you just schedule another session easily online. And your designated coach will call you at that exact requested date and time. Now, if you don't yet have the credit scores that you want, we work with several of the pioneers in the industry, including John Alzheimer, who was one of the creators of the original FICO score, Edward Jamison, one of the most nationally respected credit attorneys, in order to give you the education and steps that you need to drive your credit scores higher at the fastest rate possible. Now, this is also a free resource to all coaching members. All of our coaches are employed locally and work full-time for VIP. And because we provide a unique partnership between you and a certified coach, instead of selling products that generalize the techniques we teach, our success ratios and our accountability to following through and realizing positive results with you are typically far more effective than other options. And in many cases, we charge a fraction of the price of other comparable options. Whereas many coaching programs can cost as much as $45,000 or $50,000, our 2-year membership only costs a little over $5,000. For business owners, this is typically a tax-deductible purchase, and what's great about this system is that you share the free education with others and get your coaching rebated eventually in full and more through the affiliate program. We're proud to offer the first self-perpetuating cash flow solution of this type in the entire world. We do guarantee satisfaction to ensure that our level of integrity is always at its highest. And finally, for business owners, we do something special that is totally unique and is subject to availability but incredibly valuable. We provide free marketing, including up to 3 customized promotional videos, a logo, or a business card. Our superstar team will even create a supercharge of each of your social media accounts by up to 5,000 views, followers, and Facebook fans. Therefore, when one is qualified, the VIP coaching solution is often preferred over other options. Now, keep in mind, even if coaching is not something that you are presently qualified to receive, or you just simply don't want ongoing coaching, don't be concerned. You can expect to receive the highest level of expertise, professionalism, and value during your free coaching session, ensuring an excellent experience. Regardless of your current financial circumstances, you have all the control that you need to build and live any lifestyle that you desire. And we look forward to being an ongoing part of your success and exceeding your expectations. Now, if you've found value in the training series or other VIP courses, please share the website with people that you care most about right away. In a volatile economy, we must break the cycle of government dependency and help one another access the knowledge that we should have been taught in school. Please follow the prompts provided to share your feedback about our training and schedule your complimentary one-on-one coaching session today. Now, because we provide the free coaching sessions as a courtesy to thousands of people, it is available on a first-come, first-served basis and will always be subject to availability. So don't delay. Enhance your banking experience today. For any questions or feedback, please call toll-free 866-969-2738. Thank you for tuning in.